Let's speak first with Temir Porras Ponceleon, who is former Venezuelan Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and Chief of Staff to Nicolas Maduro. He's now Managing Director of Global Sovereign Advisory, which advises governments on strategic, economic and financial issues, and joins me now. Well, you are a man who knows Nicolas Maduro very well. I suppose, firstly, what you've made of the appearances in court in the last few days with regards to Venezuela.
Well, he didn't just appear in a court in New York. He was abducted from Caracas after being subject to a military attack. So it's a pretty unique way of appearing in New York. Again, this is the world we're living in, irrespective of what you think of Nicolas Maduro. The actions of the United States, who bombed, I must repeat it, bombed Caracas, making 40 to 60 dead, according to the reports that we can have, is an illegal act of aggression against a country that didn't threaten the national security of Venezuela, of the United States. And, well, the thing is...
He would say you didn't exactly help it.
Who would say?
Well, I'm sure the US president, in fact, not just, I'm sure various US leaders would say that whilst, yes, you can talk about the threat posed by Maduro and Venezuela, they will certainly argue the toss that Venezuela wasn't exactly a helpful ally in Latin America.
Yeah, but it is not mandatory to be a helpful ally of a powerful country. I mean, international relations work in a way that sovereign nations can make their decisions, and there's a clear definition of what is legal and what is illegal. So as long as you don't break international law, you're entitled to your opinions. You can make alliances with sovereign countries wherever you want, and don't have to be subject to a military action, unilateral military action from a powerful country, just because, once again, you can support the vision of the United States, but that doesn't make its actions overseas legal. For instance, the U.S. administration has said this is a law enforcement operation because there were DEA and FBI agents. But I remind that Venezuela is not in the U.S. territory, so the U.S. law does not apply in Venezuela or in Greenland or in the UK. So this vision of the world where, it's not new, but this vision of the world where the United States conducts police actions on a sovereign state could very well fall on Maduro. It has happened, but President Trump, it is probably less known in Europe, has threatened the president of Colombia, who's an elected leader in a functioning democracy, just because he doesn't like his views on world affairs.
It's interesting the way you say that. You're suggesting that Maduro is not legitimately elected. Do you accept that?
The fact that I would accept that does not justify.
Oh, of course it doesn't. But I am just curious because given your closeness to Maduro, being his former chief of staff, you do accept that he was there illegitimately.
I was his chief of staff more than a decade ago. Yeah. So his legitimacy or not is subject to debate. I can agree with that. But that doesn't give the right to the United States to invade the country.
But you do agree. You do agree with that. Just to be clear, because then we can move on. You do agree that it was illegitimate or not?
And you do agree with the fact that the U.S. invaded Venezuela illegally. You do agree with that. You can say that,
under international law. Yeah, it appears so. Yeah. So now, do you agree that he was there illegitimately?
Absolutely, but that's not the conversation today. The fact that we have these parallel conversations is the only thing that I want to point out. Is that would seem to give an excuse for what happened to President Maduro. And should I say, as a follow-up comment, that the very Trump administration that made this argument to justify the removal of President Maduro is the one that made the choice of stability in Venezuela, accepting the fact that the now acting president of Venezuela is Maduro's former vice president. It was their choosing
Rodriguez.
Yes, absolutely, to leave to leave the institutions in place. So this is kind of contradictory with that argument about legitimacy.
Yes, quite, and that is curious. What is the future of Venezuela now, do you think? Because we are where we are, not clearly where you want to be, and you understandably disagree with what has happened. I accept that. But what happens now? Do we go for free and fair elections, or what is the future of the country?
I certainly don't agree with my country being bombed. I think that's a natural reaction, but it's a fact. That's true. What lies ahead, in my opinion, the most important thing is to preserve, and I think somehow after the reckless attack of Venezuela, a wise decision has been made to preserve the stability of the country. It is very clear that the U.S. administration is seeking Venezuelan resources. This is not about democracy. So elections are not on the table because the Trump administration is interested in Venezuela's oil. And he made it very clear that his interest was to have the U.S. companies coming back to the country, and that requires stability. This is the reason why Mrs. Rodriguez was chosen, because she has the loyalty of the army, which is a fundamental institution in Venezuela, not the opposition. So he favors stability, and somehow the bet is that this situation, however odd it may be for observers outside Venezuela, at least guarantees peace, guarantees stability, and guarantees what most Venezuelans are seeking, which is, a prosperous country that gets out of a long crisis that it has been immersed in for the last decade. So again, hoping is not a strategy, but stability seems to be a wise choice today.
Thank you for your time, Temir Porras Ponceleon, who is the former Venezuelan Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and Chief of Staff to Nicolás Maduro, now Managing Director of Global Sovereign Advisory.